Coaching role for a trainer. A trainer will need to understand the physical and mental requirements of the sport that they're coaching, so that their coaching sessions are specific and will benefit the team. Also, the manager will have a say in the coaching sessions, because at most clubs you have a first team coach and a manager, and the manager sort of does like the tactical side, but the coach will also do like most of the session, so he'll run. When is this role used? The trainer will need to understand the physical and mental requirements of the sport. They need to make sure that the training is specific for the athlete. Another part of this role is to be a motivator and always be in good spirits so that the athlete is positive throughout their training. Coach 1, Owen Fisher, Futsal Brighton Hove Albion coach. How does he demonstrate this role? Owen Fisher demonstrates the role of a trainer really well. He knows all the tactical and physical requirements of futsal and plans his session to make sure it's specific and not too hard for us. He pushes us, but doesn't make the training unrealistic to the goals we'd like to achieve. So when he does his sessions, they're always set up early, gives the information over to us nice and easy so we all understand, and if we don't understand then we go and have a word or ask or stop it and just say stop, stand still, and then he shall show us what to do. Coach number 2, Jose Mourinho is the manager at Chelsea Football Club. He will, at the start of a week, he'll have a team meeting with the squad and talk to them about what they want to achieve in training this week for the build up to the game at the weekend. So this may be a tactical session, or it may be a fitness session, and they'll do some gym work in between that, maybe a couple of times a week, along with their football sessions, their fitness sessions. But the main thing is Jose Mourinho will talk to his head coaches about what they think is best for the squad leading up to the game at the weekend. So for example, they could be playing Leicester, so they may want to work on some things, unlike last week where they might have played Sunderland or Tottenham, so they may have had to work on something different one week compared to the other, and that is how Jose Mourinho demonstrates the role of a trainer. Ivan Lendl demonstrates the role of a trainer by getting Andy Murray prepared for games. Ivan, being a tennis coach, and Andy Murray being a tennis player, they will have a very quick turnaround of games, especially when they play Grand Slam tournaments. For example, Wimbledon, they play every other day pretty much, and then they get a couple of days off for the final. That's if they get that far. So the job of Lendl is to make sure that he recovers right, so whether that's taking on the right fluid or the right food, make sure he eats well. But another part of that is how he coaches him. So that could be maybe doing a couple of rally sessions or working on his serve or something like that. But that is how Ivan Lendl demonstrates the role of a trainer. Coaching responsibility description. Legal, child protection. Coaches, when they do their coaching qualifications, will also have to do a CRB check. This is a background check on to see if they've got any previous convictions, and that will work. And then if they do, then obviously they're not deemed safe to work with children. But if they don't, then there isn't a problem there. And then they have to also provide information of who they are, to make sure that obviously they're not someone else. This responsibility is used when coaching kids, so that they have all the correct legal information in place for them to be able to coach the kids. The football club will obviously take all their information to make sure that they are safe and deemed okay to coach kids, because child protection is very important, and that is when it's used. This responsibility is very important because if you are not safe to work with children and you have got criminal convictions, then God knows what might happen. But at the end of the day, it's just not it's not the right thing to do. You can't work with kids if you've got criminal convictions, and it's not safe, and parents won't like it and clubs won't accept it. And it's really important that you have that piece of paperwork that says you don't have any convictions and that you are safe to work with children. Otherwise, if you do want a career working with children, then it's going to really hinder you. Coaching responsibility 3. Legal, insurance, responsibility description. Football coaches must have public liability insurance. That's right, mate. Must have public liability insurance. This will cover them for any thing that may happen. So, for instance, a child could break his leg. Also, he will do a risk assessment on the facility where he's training. So that's another piece of documentation that you can show if a child does break his leg. But yeah, that is a very severe consequence if it will happen. But football is a contact sport and it may. But the coach should always have insurance so that he's covered for something like that. When is this responsibility used? This responsibility is used when doing a coaching session. Every coaching session you will do, your insurance will cover that unless it's run out, so obviously you just renew it. Your public liability insurance will cover you for anything that happens in the vicinity of where you're coaching. Obviously you would have done your risk assessment, so everything on there is stated, and obviously you wouldn't start coaching if something was unsafe, so obviously everything on there is okay. Obviously you'll be under supervision of another coach unless you're coaching by yourself, but he will also have a risk assessment and his own insurance. So yeah, that is when it's... Why is this responsibility important? This responsibility is very important because in the case of if something does happen, for example, a broken leg or a broken arm, then your public liability insurance will cover that, and obviously you've done a risk assessment, so when you give your risk assessment to someone that would like to see it, obviously you're then covered for that because you've done it, and you wouldn't have started this session if it wasn't safe for the children. So that's why it's very important. Coaching responsibility number 4. I've chosen knowledge of coaching environment, responsibility description. Football coaches should know what before they start the session, or a week in advance. Say they should go and check out. Say if they're coaching at a new venue, to go and work out the size and what the surface is like, whether it's safe, and make sure they do a risk assessment. Because if the surface is not safe, then obviously they shouldn't train there, and that's unsafe for the people, the children they're training. When is this responsibility used? This coaching responsibility is used prior to a session and during a session. For example, prior to a session, you should always go and check out the venue. For example, if it's a new venue, make sure that the correct facilities are there. Make sure there's toilets. There may need to be running water. Also that the surface is safe and that the size of the location is admirable for what you need it for. Also there may need to be first aid facilities and shower facilities. If that is the case, then obviously you need to sort that out prior, and if it isn't the right venue, then obviously change your venue. But during the session, the surface may change, so it might go from being dry, and then you might get a 10-minute downpour of rain, and as we live in England that does happen, so the surface may become slippery. But if it does, then obviously that becomes unsafe and we'll take the players off, but that shouldn't happen because it's mud and it won't really hurt that much. Why is this responsibility important? This responsibility is very important because, say for example, the surface isn't safe and you didn't know about it, and you tell your players to wear Astro trainers and they turn up on a muddy football pitch and they're slipping around everywhere, falling into each other, then that makes the session unsafe and you'll have to stop the session. It's very important that injuries don't occur due to the surface, otherwise obviously it becomes unsafe. There might not be toilets or running water there, that then becomes unhygienic in some cases. In other cases it's not necessary, also depending on the level of football you're playing. First aid facilities would be very nice at most football pitches in the country, but we just don't have the funding to provide that.